Yay. We are live.
Hello.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
This is the second episode of Spirit Speaks, an intuitively guided session of spiritual wisdom that seems to come through me, your host, Ari McGowan.
Yes.
Do you have it? What would you like to talk about today?
I remember the other time I was thinking about to bring clarity if somebody is seeing things or understanding things differently, that this work, this understanding is for the kingdom of love, the kingdom of God. And it is not for like my own glory or like individual ego's glories.
Right.
I wanted to talk about that, yeah.
Yeah. This sense of why are we doing this and to whose benefit, essentially. I see this as really the most simple correction that we can bring to this is that we are all one, right? And so anything that we seem to be learning benefits everyone, right? So I think you and I talked about this before regarding the kind of egoic flavor of spirituality where we are participating in kind of dipping our toes in to spirituality, right? Which the ego totally loves. Participating in a very kind of washed way, kind of a watered down way, right? Also recognizing kind of how you described where there is a flavor of kind of spiritual practice in which it seems to become this grandiose kind of personality trait, right? Oh, I am spiritual, I have these practices, therefore I'm better than you, right? Or in order to be spiritual, I have to make myself humble and live in poverty, right? So the ego is always going to try and make us greater than other people or less than other people, right? So these are the first things that come to mind, right? Is understanding how can we recognize, how can we bring clarity to how we're seeing these things and see them clearly in a way of recognizing how they are being used to perpetuate, despite being spiritual things and spiritual practices, how are they being used to perpetuate a story of fear or a story of separation, as opposed to how are we using them to reinforce, right? How are we using these truths and these spiritual practices to reinforce the truth that we are not separate, right? So yeah, the way that this has shown up for me is in both ways, right? There seems to be the ego seems to hold on to the sense of spirituality, right? And as we're very familiar with the idea of inflating the ego, right? Where it's like you get that puffed chest and you're like, oh, wah, 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 here I am, And cool, that's awesome, right? There's nothing wrong with that. It's perfect for learning. Eventually, it's inevitable that whoever seems to be experiencing that will and does learn that is not the true purpose, if that makes sense, of these spiritual practices of engaging with truth in this way, right? The other way that this shows up and has shown up in my life is, to be spiritual, I must put myself at the bottom, right? I must live in a state of lack to prove that I don't care about lack, right? Or to prove any of these things, right? Whereas to subject yourself to anything less than, right, is a in that context, for me anyway, was a way of withholding love from myself, right? Putting myself lower than other people. And neither are very clear understandings of the true purpose of these practices and of these teachings, right? I think, yeah, as you stated, the true purpose is to bring this learning for the benefit of all, right? So understanding that this learning is for the benefit of the entire kingdom of God, right? Of all of the quote unquote seeming individuals in this experience, as opposed to seeing it as something that benefits you as a separate entity, right? There is nothing that affects you alone, right? All of your thoughts are shared. All of your experiences are shared, right? There is no, this idea of autonomy and privacy and independence are all false ideas made up by the story of fear, truly, right? Yeah. They cannot exist. All of these stories cannot exist from the understanding that we are not separate. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, the way that this part in particular shows up for me a lot is the hyper independence, right? I've recognized that this sense of hyper independence and this desire for freedom and autonomy and not to be controlled and all of these things are only ego thoughts. They can only be made by a belief in separation from others, a belief in separation from God. There is no true independence, right? Because we are one. This came up yesterday and today for me in my thoughts, right? And these are, again, just to clarify, these are meaningless thoughts for those who engage with A Course in Miracles, right? So, and what we mean by meaningless thoughts is that they do not have power unless we assign power to them, right? They do not have meaning unless we make them meaningful with our creative power of our mind, right? Yeah. And so understanding we have an infinite, an undescribable number of thoughts every day. And these thoughts can seem to arise from our true state of being, right? The miracle mindedness, the love that we truly are, seeing clearly our brothers who are one with us. Or they can arise seemingly from the story of fear and the defensiveness that we have learned over and over and over again. And I noticed a thought, the woman I'm renting a room in a house from, right? She has not been there, for a while, and so it's been very wonderful for me to essentially be living alone, and she was there yesterday, and I was going to have Akina come over yesterday, my great friend, for a little Galentine's Day party, and to navigate, they had informed me previously, just let us know if someone's coming over, right? And it has become clear to me that it's, let us know if someone's coming over, but it's not just inform us, it's we have the right to say no if it conflicts with whatever we're doing, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not really just let us know if someone's coming over, it's we have to give you permission for someone to come over. And this made me very uncomfortable, and not uncomfortable to the true sense, but just I had a reaction of understanding I don't even want anyone to come over then. If it's going to be a relationship, if I'm going to have to, if I am making, right, this story of requiring engagement, of asking permission, right? I don't want to participate. I just don't want to participate in that way, right? And that's perfect. Great. I'm understanding there's nothing wrong with what's happening, right? My preference is perfect, right? Nothing bad happened. Nothing wrong happened. It all makes perfect sense, right? However, I just have a felt sense of, okay, cool, I don't want to engage in that way. Yeah. Right? And I'm not saying I don't want to engage that way and then going on the offensive or being defensive and saying, well, that's not what you said. You said I just have to tell you and this, that, and the other thing, you know. And so I'm not trying to change the dream. I'm not trying to change what the seeming rules are or what someone else's preferences are. And I'm not trying to change my own preferences, right? I'm understanding I don't want to relate in that way. Cool. Awesome. I don't have to. There's no obligation to relate in that way, right? The other thing that came up was some of these kind of desires they had for housekeeping things, right?
Oh, okay.
And, you know, oh, can you do this? But it was things I was already doing, right? Which is always funny to me, right? And this is one of the ego's favorite ways to be reactive, right? If someone says, oh, can you do this? Oh, well, I was already doing that. Anything else? You know? And I just welcomed it. I said, great, we're learning how to cohabitate. We're learning how to exist in this space together. And I've been here alone for so long, so we haven't had to have these conversations before. And it was interesting to see their reactions after the fact, you know, very apologetic. I'm so sorry for attacking you right when you walk in the door with these things that I would like you to do differently. Oh, wow. And, you know, kind of expecting me to have a hard time with them teaching me that the dishwasher needs more rinse agent, you know. So just like very interesting, like little things. And it just kind of showed me, what they're expecting, right? What they were expecting was defensiveness. What they were expecting was a sense of push and pull. Yeah. Right? And there was nothing there, right? And I'm curious to see what happens, you know? They also, to see how my ego plays with this is so interesting, you know? My ego has made up these thoughts of, maybe I shouldn't live there anymore. I don't want to be police. They shouldn't be telling me what to do. I already did that fucking thing, you know, like all of these things. Yeah. All of these things. Or, you know, they made a comment of, you know, hopefully the rent and electric doesn't go up because they don't want to charge me more for rent and this sort of thing. And in my mind, I'm saying, well, I'm paying rent, and previously you had no one living here. Yeah. Right? So you're receiving, right, an extra how much money every month. Yeah. And that's already increased, right, to help pay the bills. And so it's one of those where it's like I'm looking at this again from the goggles of fear. Yeah. Right? And it doesn't seem like fear, right? To say it's from the goggles of fear might not seem accurate at first because I don't feel afraid. But you can tell it's from the goggles of fear because it's defensive, right? Because I'm defending my position and somehow trying to protect myself from whatever's going on in this situation. Does that make sense? Yeah. So the defensiveness arises from fear. So in an effort to defend myself, this voice, this thought, this meaningless thought, right? Because I assign no meaning to it. it is helpful. It is perfectly helpful because it is showing me where I'm still holding on to this belief in separation, this belief of fear, this belief I need to defend myself and protect myself, right?
I've noticed this throughout my life. It's very interesting. It almost feels like a lesson that is made. It's
yes.
like, all right, which choice are you going to make?
Perfect.
You know?
Yeah.
At different times, like with jobs or relationships,
totally.
many things. It's like, I look, nothing. Then, when it comes, it's like, there's multiple choices that I can do. It's like, oh, this is, it feels like it's somebody's making a test for you.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. And you can make either choice and it will be perfect.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's the other thing, is we don't have to feel a pressure to make a specific choice or do anything specific, right? However, I just noticed these thoughts come in, and these thoughts are like, I'm already giving you way more money than you were getting before. You were getting $0 before, right? And now you're getting $600 a month, right? Which compared to zero is a lot, right? And yeah, your rent, like your electricity and heat are going to go up because someone's actually living here. But let's say that goes up even by $100 a month. You're still getting $500 more per month than you were getting before. Right? So like this whole, again, these are like defenses that my ego is making up of like, they're not justified for their behavior because I'm doing the right thing. And therefore they're the ones who are crazy. And they're the ones to blame for this going the way it's going. That sort of thing. So it's interesting to see, and then the other story that the ego loves to make up in my mind is maybe I should just leave. Like, fine, you don't want me here, I'll go somewhere else, And it's like, so they just asked me to use the dishwasher. And my ego is making up this story of like, fine, I'm fucking out of here, It's hilarious. It's hilarious. And again, these thoughts are not meaningful, right? I assign them no meaning, right? They are perfectly helpful, again, for showing me what I am believing, right? Because as we've identified before, our beliefs turn into what we want. What we want then turns into our thoughts and actions, right? So our beliefs, if I believe that I'm separate from God, and therefore I am not safe, is what I believe, right? And so then my want is to be safe, right? And if it was my natural state to be unsafe, I would want to be unsafe because that would be my natural state, right? Yeah. But since it is not my natural state to be unsafe, I want to be safe. Yeah. And then this continues into thoughts and actions that are me trying to attain safety. Are me trying to attain safety. So for example, with housing, this shows up all the time, where it's like, oh, I'm unsafe to be myself here, right? I'm unsafe. It's not safe for me to have friends, which is so ridiculous and not true, obviously, And they want me to know, like, oh, just make sure your friend knows that she is welcome here. And it's like, oh yeah, well, sometimes she's welcome here. This is the voice of the ego. So sassy. Yeah, so sassy, right? All of these conditions. And recognizing I'm making them, right? Recognizing I'm making them. And then even to, again, just to understand kind of what this other party is expecting, right? So for example, I shared with them that I had talked to a friend of mine about coming to help me clean the house, right? And because they had not been there. And so it seemed ridiculous to me for them to pay someone to come clean the house when they have not been there, right? And I told them, oh, you haven't been here, so I had just talked to my friend about coming in and helping out. And they said, oh, well, it's really very dusty, and we'll just hire, whoever. And I was like, yeah, yes, and my friend is a professional house cleaner and has a business and does this task, And they said, well, are you going to pay them? And I said, oh, well, we trade work all the time with massage and all these other tasks, right? And they said, oh, well, maybe they wouldn't be happy. Like, no, we won't do that because maybe they wouldn't be happy with the trade. Right? And so you can just tell that this person is expecting something to go wrong. And it sounded like expecting that it would fall on them. Right? Like, that was my understanding of it, is, oh, this person is expecting something to go wrong and expecting that they're going to have to pay for it, essentially. If for example, if someone comes to clean their house, paid by another professional with a trade, right? If they don't like the trade, but they clean the person's house has to pay them, and all of this. So it's just...
Yeah, the ego likes to complicate things.
Yeah.
Like, overthink. Like, just relax.
It's okay,
Can't you just see it as somebody, a friend?
Well, and it's so funny, right? Like, I see this, and it's totally hilarious to me, because I had shared with them, they had shared that they would love to receive regular massages, and we had at one point talked about this being part of our rental agreement, right? And then when it came time for the rental agreement, or we were talking about it in more detail, they had mentioned that they were not interested in doing that anymore, right? Because it complicates things. It complicates things to have a trade like that in an agreement. And sure, okay, whatever you'd like to do. And then in my rental agreement, it says, to help to contribute to electric and heating bill, Arya will be required to do up to 2 hours of work a week to help out on the property. Which is quite funny to me. And again, my ego wants to rise to this occasion and say, this is so hypocritical. They say they don't want to trade, and then in the rental agreement, they do want a trade. What? They just want me to do different work than the work I actually do, right? Mm-hmm. So it's just very interesting to see where, again, some trades for work and for money or for housing or for, some of these work for this person. And then some of them don't, right? Some of them are justifiable and some of them aren't. Some of them justify fear, right? This idea of, oh, you're trading with someone and then they're going to come help out here and then this goes, what if it goes wrong and it comes back on me, right? Again, you're using this exchange, right, to justify defensiveness and to justify fear, right? And recognizing this person is me, right? So I am able to bring to truth not just my own thoughts, actions, and behaviors, right, to identify where I'm still believing the lie of separation, but also what I notice come up in seemingly another body. What I notice come up in another person's experience and what they're sharing with me, these thoughts and actions and behaviors that, again, seem to be coming up in someone else are also showing me where I am still believing in separation. Does that make sense?
Yeah. This is a deep thought. It reminds me a lot of the scripture in the Bible when Jesus says, if you do these good actions to the ones that you consider least, between you, so like the homeless or a prisoner or whatever they think is lower than society.
Yeah.
He said, you're actually doing the loving kindness to me. So it always goes back to we are all one, God, Jesus, all of us, everything that exists is always connected, always.
Totally.
So, yeah, I don't know, that scripture comes to my mind quite a bit.
Nice. Well, it's like what you and I were talking about last night, where when we seem to notice a sense of defensiveness in other people, one of the best things that we can do is not to tell them they don't have to be defensive, but to just show through our actions that they don't have to be defensive. Right? Because we learn by doing, we learn by applying so much more than we learn by someone telling us, hey, relax, I'm not going to fuck you over, Nobody believes that. If you say, "Hey, relax, I'm not gonna fuck you over," they're gonna sit there and
start thinking.
they're gonna sit there and say like,
"Why did you say that?
Why did you say that?"
Yeah.
Maybe you are, and you're trying to get me to let my guard down, so then you can.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Which is so funny.
And time will tell by the actions, you know.
Yeah.
Just like the
totally.
seasons
They'll
will
learn
tell
slowly but surely.
of the fruits,
You know.
yeah.
So this has all been very interesting, and yeah, very interesting. And I see where, again, I was trying to make myself separate from my friend who I'm renting a house from, right? I'm trying to make myself separate. I'm making myself a separate entity. I'm making myself defensive, right? I'm making myself fearful against this person. I'm afraid of this person, right? And I must defend myself against them, right? Or I must distance myself from them, right? This is the other flavor that I seem to prefer is, oh, let me just exit the situation and then I don't have to deal with this.
Yeah.
You know? Like, let me just not. You
Ooh,
know, as opposed to saying, oh, I can relate in a different way, I can choose how I relate. The ego immediately says, oh, just like, get away so you don't have to do it at all.
Just remove the problem. Don't even
try and fix it. Don't try to engage. Like, just do not engage. Move on. Things aren't going exactly how you want them to be going. So.
But how important it is if a person desires the growth and to learn and to remember, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Go through the problem, accept it.
Yeah.
You know?
Well,
think of it like a game.
Yeah.
Like, let's see what I can learn from it.
See clearly that there is no problem.
Yeah.
Like, that's the truth, right? So this is where my ego is again, infiltrating, right, so to speak. And again, these are meaningless thoughts unless I give them meaning, unless I give them power, right? But this is where, again, the ego is kind of infiltrating. These thoughts of just distance yourself, don't put up with it, move on, all of these ideas are stemming only from a avoidance, right? They're stemming only from an avoidance. Oh, we don't want to bring this to truth because that's going to be more work. We're going to have to go through this and it's going to be suffering and it's going to be hard and all of this, and right? All of these different flavors of avoidance, you know? And to see it clearly is, I'm perfectly happy no matter what. I'm recognizing my preferences, and if at one day my preference is not to live there, great. But that preference may arise out of a gentle neutrality. That preference, any of these preferences, are not necessarily going to arise from a state of defensiveness. They're not arising from a state of fear and protecting oneself, and this is what I have to do in order to be safe, right? Because that's really where it comes from. It looks like I'm pushing away this situation, right? Really, I'm afraid. I'm afraid that this situation is unsafe, right? And so in an effort to make myself safe, I am distancing myself from it. As opposed to recognizing, I am perfectly safe no matter what seems to be going on.
Yeah, that is the truth.
That's the truth, right?
Yeah. It feels so freeing when you arrive to that thought, when you see the truth clearly in every little ego's thoughts or dilemmas or whatever it likes to create and make you think.
Yeah.
You know, it feels so free, like freeing. It's like,
you're like,
I can see clearly now. I don't have to give any weight to that.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another game my ego has started playing in regards to this avoidance, right, and being afraid of love that I have shared with you, is like, I like this steel wall has been erected, right, where it's just push everyone away, don't let anyone get too close. And again, it looks like this hard exterior, right, this like tough guy attitude, but really it is stemming from fear, right? It is stemming from a feeling of not being safe, not being worthy, not being loved. All of these, which again we can trace back to a belief in separation from God, right? And so again, we're not worried about changing how it's expressing, right? I'm not worried about changing and trying to force myself to not be defensive or to not be resistive or any of these things. I am shifting things on the level of the belief, right? And then my wants change. When I see that I am safe on the level of belief, I no longer am seeking safety. I bring my sense of safety into everything that I'm experiencing, right? And then my thoughts and actions and behaviors change, right? So this has been the gentle correction that I've been bringing to my experience about resisting and being defensive towards love, right? And the way that this has continued to show up has been really cool. And, excuse me, I noticed a feeling or like a energy, body, sense, however you want to describe it, of, oh, now that I am allowing my defenses to come down, right? There is a feeling of just like openness and vulnerability, right? Because again, I have overlearned defensiveness. I have learned to be defensive over and over and over again. And every time I have opened up, right, enough to not be so defensive, I have, something has occurred, right? Which the something that occurred is totally neutral. However, because I overlearned fear and defensiveness, my mind assigned meaning to what occurred to make it meaningful and to make it justify fear. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I open myself up, something neutral happens. I interpret that neutral thing as a justification for fear. And then I close up again. And again, because of fear, I am defensive, right? And now, again, recognizing that I'm not trying to change the defensiveness, I'm changing how I'm seeing, right? And so I'm able to be defenseless, right? And again, shift my seeing, shift how I am interpreting events based on a belief that I am always safe and always loved, right?
Yeah.
So it's been really cool. And then I also notice now that the defenses are low, there's another voice of the ego that is saying, okay, well, if we're so open, right? We need to make sure to have basically constant support, consistency, right? Like very needy little kid, of like, hey, attention please, And so it's just, again, two flavors of the same story, right? Both flavors, both the flavor of, again, kind of seeking this attention and that proving safety, right? Seeking this attention outside of myself and that proving safety, as well as I am not safe and defending myself, right? They are two stories of the same thing. They are two sides of the same coin, right?
Yeah.
So it's just so fun to witness, It's perfect, right? We notice these thoughts come up. We say, oh, cool. Where did you come from, right? And it's very easy to tell, are you coming from a story of fear? Are you coming from a story of lack? Is there any lack in the world based on your story, right? Am I lacking anything based on your story? Is this story making anyone guilty, right? So I noticed an interpretation of what was happening with my housemates where I was like, oh, they're trying to make me guilty, right? Or I could take that interpretation, right? All the thoughts are there. I could totally allow them to prove how guilty I am, right? And to make me guilty for not doing this and not doing that. And, oh, if you could please do this and not do that. And, all of these things. Or how, again, using the same story, I could make them guilty, right? Of telling me one thing and then they want it to be a different way, right? Telling me, oh, you can have friends over, just let us know ahead of time, to like, actually, we need to approve of whether or not they can come over.
Yeah. Right?
So any of these like funny little things, recognizing they could be interpreted either way. I could interpret that and say, oh, no one's guilty here. Great, thank you for letting me know, right? And this gets so much easier with practice.
Yeah.
But it takes
To recognize
it. Yeah, it takes watching the thoughts, noticing the thoughts that are actually coming up,
Yeah.
and bringing them to the truth,
Yeah.
right? Not assigning meaning to them automatically, right? Because that's unnecessary,
Yeah.
right?
Distractions. They seem like distractions if you focus too much on all these little rules and things, you know, the ego story. And I also love.
Well, if you take them personally,
Yeah.
because again, the rules and what seems to be happening in the story, great, they're meaningless. They don't really matter. Participate, don't participate. Do what you want to do,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we're not trying to make anyone do what they don't want to do,
Yeah.
right?
But it, like, I was thinking.
But to take them personally,
Yeah.
that's what I was going to say, right? To take them personally, and to say that this is making me guilty or someone else guilty or fill in the blank, that is where we are assigning meaning to what is occurring,
Yeah.
as opposed to just letting it be neutral, as it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you don't have that awareness of like catching it, like, oh, this is the
Yes.
voice of the ego that's
Right.
just, you know, making up stories
Right.
and distractions.
Yeah.
And then I also loved some time ago, we were talking about, you know, being aware of these voices of the ego, these stories. And then I really liked when you talked about to like invite that voice, the story.
Yeah.
You know, if you like to bring that up, that was
Sure,
very nice.
I can share that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
The tea, remember?
yeah,
that was
totally.
nice.
I think this can be a helpful tool for understanding how we can engage with the different voices in our head, right? So, and this is, so what Davide was saying was just understanding how when you are not used to determining which voice you're listening to, whether it's a voice of ego or a voice of clarity, right? A voice of clear seeing the world, or the ego being the story of fear that is perpetuated, so to speak. So if you're not used to being able to determine kind of which voice is which and where it's coming from, and recognizing, for example, the Course in Miracles and a number of other courses in the Universal Curriculum of Love are meant to be mind training courses, to better teach the skill of watching the mind,
Yeah.
right? Of, as the observer, noticing what seems to be coming up, as opposed to what we have kind of been taught is believe whatever's coming up, right? So just noticing, right? Just noticing these things. So the helpful tool that I taught a while ago, but
Yeah,
it
I
keeps
don't
coming
remember
up.
when,
It's a great
but
story,
it
right?
was good.
So
because also some people don't want to let this voice talk to them. They're like, just be quiet.
Shove it down,
Be quiet.
right.
I don't want to hear it.
which is
And
the
they think
same. It's
by-
a defensiveness.
And
Yeah.
they think by doing that, the problem just
Goes
disappears.
away, right.
Oh, not true. It keeps coming back. So you have to like invite it and feel
Sure.
and talk to it.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So the story that seems to be helpful here is recognizing, okay, my true state is peace and happiness. That is who I truly am. And so I am having tea with peace all the time, right? All the time. My spirit, who I truly am, is sitting next to peace, and we're having a cup of tea together, and just calmly resting in this, right? And any emotion, any thought, right? Because ultimately it's our thought that then triggers anything else that we experience, right? So the thought is going to trigger. The thought could be quote unquote an interpretation, right? Which you can look at the word interpretation as what is the lens you're looking through a situation, right? What glasses are you using to look at a situation, right? The pair of glasses that you're using is going to so strongly affect your interpretation of what happened, or your perception of what happened is going to be different if you're wearing different glasses, right? So a thought could come up saying, oh, well, I interpreted this situation this way, right? I interpreted this situation as they're trying to make me guilty. They're bad guys. I'm not guilty, right?
Yeah.
And so my practice that I've introduced is to invite that thought, right? To invite that feeling, that body sense, whatever comes up, to come have tea with me in peace,
That's nice.
right? And so Peace and I are having tea, and this thought of defensiveness, they're trying to make me guilty. I don't want to be guilty, God, don't make me guilty, all of this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
This can come in, and Peace and I can sit there and listen and say, oh, okay, thank you for telling me. Is there anything else you'd like to share? Yeah. And this feeling can just bubble up and express itself, again, in this container, right? And I have found with this practice that eventually this feeling calms down.
Yes, that's
it dissipates. It disappears. It becomes one with me in peace.
Yeah.
Right?
It's so like you solve that problem.
Right. It like returns back to peace. Right? Mm-hmm. All of these things return back to peace because we recognize they're not based in reality. Right? They're not based in reality. They're, again, based in the interpretation. They're based in an error in perception. Right? Again, we talk about, wearing drunk goggles and how everything you look at is going to be weird with drunk goggles on. Yeah. Right? And so allowing, that is the perspective of me wearing drunk goggles. When I am myself, I'm having tea with peace the whole time. And so I'm able to have tea with peace the whole time and allow the drunk goggles perspective to come in and say, everything's wacky and weird out there. Everything's effed up. Everything's, everybody's out to get me, right? And I'm able to say, okay, cool. That's okay, right? No, it's not okay, all of this. Yeah. And I say, okay, that's cool. Thank you for telling me, You're welcome to join us if you'd like to. Yeah. You're welcome to join us. And the other thing that comes up with this story, right, is occasionally you'll say, oh, hello feeling. Yeah. Hello story. Thank you for coming up, right? Would you like to come have tea with me in peace? And the story or whatever's coming up is like, no, I don't want to hang out with peace. You got to come out here. I'm going to drag you out, right? I'm going to drag you out. I'm going to make you feel what I'm feeling. I'm going to take you away from your peace, right? And I just say, oh, actually, I'm not interested in that. Yeah. Come back again another time. Yeah. Come back again another time, right? Well, you're not listening to me. You don't care. Any of these things. I'm having tea with peace. You're welcome to join us if you'd like. Yeah. You're welcome to join us if you'd like. And this is helpful to recognize when, again, the voice is trying to fire us up and get us to believe separation and drag us into the story for the purpose of identifying with the story, right? As opposed to recognizing my identity doesn't change at all. No matter who is coming and going, I'm having tea with peace the whole time. That is my identity, right? If a story is coming up and trying to pull me into it, trying to get me to identify with it, that's where I'm like, oh, I'm not interested in that story, right? I'm not interested in that story. And eventually that story goes away. Yeah. You either identify with it, and then you eventually stop identifying with it, come back to your true identity as one with peace, as having tea with peace, for example, right? Yeah. How fun. Mm-hmm. How long have we been on? Oh, we got like 15 minutes left.
Oh, wow. Time flies.
Yeah, that's crazy. Woo! Wow. I want to share with anyone else tuning in what I shared with you yesterday of how I recognize a fear of being perfect, right? This is something that's been on my mind, is recognizing I do these little things so as to kind of self-sabotage, right? so as to kind of intentionally make myself seem less perfect in the context of the story of the world, in the context of the story of fear, the ego, however you want to phrase it, right? So like messing with my skin and making my skin less perfect, right? Or to, sometimes it shows up as like wearing particularly crummy clothes, right? So as to kind of wear a disguise and be like, no, I'm not perfect, you know? And it's interesting because neither of these affect our perfection at all, right?
Yeah.
However, I recognized my purpose behind them, my meaning making that I was assigning to these tasks to sabotage my perfection in terms of perfection in the world, right? Which again would have to do with physical appearance or behavior or any of these things, right? Which again, very surface level, right? So recognizing those are coming from those wants or those actions and behaviors are coming from a want to be perfect, right? Ultimately, which are, these wants are then stemming from a belief that I am not perfect. And so then I want to be perfect. And so then my actions or behaviors are saying I want to be perfect, right? However, there is this sense of fear of perfection, right? Just like we have a sense of fear of safety, to be honest. Like when we really look at it, the ego is always going to be defensive of truth and defensive of true safety, right? Which we can get into that later. However, to understand this in context of perfection and understanding, we can apply this context of perfection to fear, to guilt, to blame, to, all of these things. Lack of innocence, for example. So this idea of fear of perfection, recognizing I'm afraid of perfection because I have a sense of if I achieve, I have a sense that I could lose perfection, right? And so I'm afraid of perfection because there seems to be the sense of once I achieve it, if I can achieve it, which I believe I can, right? There's an ego sense of, if I just do this, 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 and this, I can achieve perfection. And yet I keep self-sabotaging, right? Because I can't achieve perfection from the ego perspective, right? So the ego perspective is saying you will always be striving for and you will never actually reach the thing you truly want, right? The analogy is like wanting an ocean and all you have is water coming out of the sink, right? So, but to the extent you don't even know the ocean exists, all you think that water comes out of is the sink. And you truly, truly want the ocean. You feel that in your truest sense. And yet you're saying, the sink is all I got, right? And it's almost like a sense of like not questioning it, right? That may be more confusing than helpful as an incomplete analogy. Anyway, so this fear of perfection, right? So I'm afraid that if I attain perfection on my own, through my actions, behaviors, deeds, etc., it can be taken away from me. If I can achieve perfection on my own, it's something I can also lose on my own, right? When in reality, it's not something I can affect at all, right? And so it's essentially, I am distancing myself from myself because I recognize my true state is perfection, is perfect, right? I am perfect. And that's not something that I can change at all, either to make myself more or less perfect or to make anyone else more or less perfect, right? We are all completely perfect just the way we are, right? And again, it has nothing to do with the body. It has nothing to do with your thoughts, actions, or behavior. It has to do with how you were created, right? Exactly. You are as God created you, right? And to think that you could affect that and make God's perfect creation somehow wrong, bad, or imperfect is a story of fear and a story of separation, right? But again, it's this fear of perfection because it's saying, if I can attain it by myself, I can also lose it, right? And what we don't want is to lose our perfection, right? Which is why this idea and this feeling of I'm not good enough, I'm not perfect, is so uncomfortable to us
Yeah.
because it is the opposite of our natural state. You are perfect. To think that you're not perfect is an uncomfortable thought because it is not your natural state, right, of being, right? So, and I've already noticed, to approach situations and say, I already am perfect, right? There's nothing I can do to affect that, either to make myself more perfect or to make myself less perfect, right? To recognize that perfection cannot be measured by any of these things in the world, right? And to also recognize that to kind of convince myself that I am afraid of perfection, to convince myself that I am not perfect, is a way of distancing myself from who I truly am, and further reinforcing this belief in separation from who I truly am, this belief in separation from who created me, right? What created me, right? Yeah, so fun. I'm so curious to see, now that it's been corrected on, again, the level of belief. We're not worried about correcting the behaviors, right? Yeah. I'm not worried at all about trying to correct or trying to change the behaviors that seem to be coming up in my experience regarding the quote-unquote self-sabotage, right? Not worried about that at all. Those can keep happening, I don't care, right? But I've just recognized that those do not affect my perfection at all. So whether those behaviors are secretly trying to maintain perfection or trying to prevent perfection, right, out of a fear of perfection, because then I would have to keep maintaining it and I would have to attain it as if it's by my own doing that it occurs, right? Yeah, so I'm just able to, I'm like, that's a neutral story again, right? I've again looked at that story. And that story, I was totally identified with that story, again, like kind of on a subconscious level, like not totally aware of what was going on. And it's when these thoughts are brought up that I say, thank you for coming up, thoughts. Let's bring you to the truth, right? And this gets easier and easier, right? Watching our thoughts gets easier and easier. Understanding how to bring things to the truth gets easier and easier, right? Yeah, it's all perfect.
It is, yeah.
It's all perfect. So I'm curious to see, the thoughts and actions may change. Because I recognize the actions and behaviors were not based on an error in what was happening, or what was seeming to happen. They were based on an error of belief, believing I was not perfect to begin with, and believing that by my own accord, I could attain this or lose it, right? Just like safety. This idea of by my own accord, I can get to safety or I can lose safety. Not possible at all.
You're always safe.
You are always safe. You are always perfect. Yeah. Or same, right, with love, right? I can attain love, I can lose love. And so it's this constant push and pull, right? Yeah. And again, the ego will say, if you attain love, you're up here. You lose love, you suck. All of these stories. And correcting that on a level of belief, I am safe, I am loved, right? I am perfect. I am innocent. Even though the images I'm making in my dream may try to convince me that I am guilty, I recognize, I say, I am innocent. And I hear the voice of the ego come up, the voice of defensiveness, of fear. You can't make me guilty, and to protect myself against guilt, I'm making them guilty, right? Yeah. So the opposite of this, right? So I'm not saying let me maintain my innocence by allowing no one to make me guilty. I'm saying I maintain my innocence by saying, you're trying to make me guilty? That's okay. It's impossible. It never works. You can't make me guilty. And I can't make you guilty. And I don't want to. Right? I don't want to make you guilty. Yeah. Okay, I think that's enough.
Yeah.
Thank you all for tuning in. We'll be back next Sunday at 12 p.m. Feel free to join us in person at our studio in White River Junction, or where you are right now on the internet. Okay, bye!